Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and hello everyone. So we are from Group 11 and we will presenting on the topic of violence, terrorism and war. Pew pew pew.
So my name is Nur Faridina Amira and I will be presenting on the topic violence. So what is actually violence? So according to the World Health Organization, violence is defined as the intentional use of physical force or power, threatened or actual, against oneself, another person, or against a group or community that either results in or has a high likelihood of resulting in injury, death, psychological harm, maldevelopment or deprivation. Meaning that violence ni semua benda yang macam intentional tau, benda yang disengajakan dengan niat untuk harm others or oneself. Benda-benda yang mendatangkan harm untuk orang tu adalah didefinisikan sebagai violence. So violence can be categorized into 3 categories. The first one is self-directed. Self-directed refers to violent acts a person inflicts upon him or herself and includes self-abuse. Maksudnya macam orang tu the violence terhadap diri dia sendiri, such as self-mutilation and suicidal behaviour. Suicidal behaviour kat sini include suicidal thoughts as well as attempt and complete suicide. Apa-apa yang berkaitan suicide, sama ada dia baru terfikir or dia pernah attempt nak buat suicide or memang dia dah complete suicide, itu dikira sebagai self-directed violence. Violence yang dia buat ke atas diri dia sendiri. The second category of violence is interpersonal violence. Interpersonal violence refers to violence inflicted by another individual or by a small group of individuals. Interpersonal ni divided into 2 subcategories. The first one is family and intimate partner violence. Ini adalah violence yang largely between family members and intimate partners, usually though not exclusively taking place in the home. This includes form of violence such as child abuse, intimate partner violence and abusive of the elderly. Ini macam violence yang orang tu buat dekat family members dia atau partner dia. Macam yang kita boleh tengok dekat sekarang ni lah, yang macam suami abuse isteri or isteri abuse suami, and everything that happens in the house, and benda-benda yang macam dengan orang terdekat dia violence yang dibuat ke atas orang-orang yang terdekat macam tu. Subcategories yang kedua is community violence. Community violence ni adalah violence yang happen between individuals who are unrelated and who may or may not know each other, generally taking place outside the home. This includes youth violence, random acts of violence, rape or sexual assault by strangers, and violence in institutional settings such as schools, workplace, prisons and nursing homes. Okay, so yang first tadi tu kan violence yang ke atas family and orang terdekat yang macam related dengan orang tu. Tapi community violence ni violence yang dia buat dekat orang lain yang maybe tak ada kena-mengena pun dengan dia, tapi dia buat violence tu dekat orang lain. Macam contoh kalau yang dekat luar sana yang macam case, any cases tu dikira community violence lah, sebab dia adalah violence case yang berlaku outside the home. Macam tu. The third and last category of violence is collective violence. Collective violence is defined as the instrumental use of violence by people who identify themselves as members of a group, whether this group is transitionary or has a more permanent identity, against another group or set of individuals in order to achieve political, economic or social objectives. This can manifest in a number of forms such as genocide, repression, terrorism and organised violent crime. Kolektif ni dia macam violence yang lebih besar, yang macam sebab dia involve a group. bila satu group ni dia against another group and dia buat anything violence lah, benda yang ganas tau. Macam terrorism tu dia categorize under collective violence sebab dia violence dalam target dia besar. Kalau macam tadi tu dia macam individual, dia macam among them je. Kalau yang ni dia besar. Dan selalunya collective violence ni dia ada purpose nak achieve dari segi akademik ke, social ke, political or anything. Okay. Under the 3 categories of violence, there falls 4 types of violence. The first one is physical violence. Physical violence is intentional use of physical force used with the potential for causing harm, injury, disability or death. Ni macam physical lah, secara fizikal kita boleh nampak benda tu. This includes but is not limited to scratching, pushing, shoving, grabbing, biting, choking, shaking, benda-benda yang macam violent, macam orang cekik ke, orang tumbuk ke, benda ganas yang kita boleh tengok. Dia macam fizikal lah, dia attack fizikal. And use of weapon also dikira physical violence. Okay, dia macam use of restraint or one's body against another person. Dia violence terhadap orang tu punya fizikal. Okay? Okay, bila tapi physical violence ni dia bukan setakat harm the orang tu punya fizikal tau, but it also can lead to negative psychological effects, such as for example, kalau contoh kat rumah ada seorang kanak-kanak ni, dia selalu dia contoh dia dera dekat rumah. So later on dia akan suffer for mental health problem and dia akan dia jadi trauma seumur hidup dia, macam tu lah. The second type of violence is sexual violence. Sexual violence involves a sexual act being committed or attempted against a victim who has not freely given consent. Macam benda-benda sexual, macam orang sexual assault, benda tu without orang tu punya consent. And this includes but not limited to the force, alcohol, drug facilitated or unwanted penetration, sexual touching or non-contact acts of a sexual nature. Dia macam benda yang orang, the victim tak rela tau, tapi dia buat. Benda ni selalu kita tengok kat TV ada kan, yang macam dia spike perempuan tu punya drinks and they do inappropriate things to her without her consent. Sebab contoh perempuan tu, the woman is drunk, lepas tu dia tak sedar apa, itu dia kira sexual violence. Sebab the man, the person who do that, dia memaksa diri dia ke atas perempuan tu. Itu dikira sexual violence. This type of violence can also lead to physical harm. In the most cases has severe negative psychological effects tu. Macam selalunya sexual violence ni, orang yang buat tu dia macam out of his or her state of mind. Dia macam they are not in the right state of mind. Usually lah, not all, but sebab tu lah dia akan lead to negative effect. Macam dia contoh dia kasar dengan perempuan tu or lelaki tu, so dia akan macam harm physically, macam contoh ada lebam-lebam ke. Lepas tu psychological pun of course lah affected kan. So dia macam related to each other, every type of violence ni. Okay, the next type of violence is psychological violence. Psychological violence ni includes the verbal and non-verbal communication with the intent to harm another person mentally or emotionally, to exert control over another person. Ni macam orang kata kacau mental orang lah, bagi mental orang koyak macam tu. Dia tak attack physically, but they used his or her words tu yang membuatkan orang tu rasa sakit kat dalam. Dia kacau psychological well-being orang tu. The impact of psychological violence can be just as significant as that of other more physical form of violence, as the perpetrator subjects the victim to behavior which may result in some form of psychological trauma. Sama lah macam tadi tu kan, bila orang dah attack kita punya mental, macam dia buatkan kita ni rasa macam problematic sangat lah, macam ada problem dengan kita, akan rasa terganggu dengan apa yang cakap tu. So orang tu is actually committing psychological violence towards us. Okay, ada psychological effect that can happen such as anxiety, depression, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Itu benda-benda effect daripada psychological violence. Contoh psychological violence yang kita boleh tengok macam contoh body shaming. Benda tu dia tahu orang tu insecure pasal benda tu, tapi dia akan mention benda tu just to hurt that person. Dia malukan orang tu depan orang lain, or dia downgrade ke orang tu depan orang lain. Dia macam lowkan self-esteem orang tu, tahu tak? Okay, the last types of violence is neglect. Neglect means abaikan, pengabaian. Neglect or deprivation is a type of abuse which occurs when someone has the responsibility to provide care for an individual who is unable to care for him or her. Dia ada tanggungjawab tu, dia diberikan tanggungjawab untuk jaga orang tu, tapi dia fail to jaga orang tu dengan baik. Dia fail to take care of him or her properly. So bila dia dah fail, they will become deprived of adequate care or medical care, or the failure to fulfill other needs for which the victim cannot provide themselves. Benda yang victim tu tak boleh nak providekan untuk diri sendiri. Macam dia mengharapkan orang lain. Macam budak kecil, kita jaga budak kecil, budak kecil tu memerlukan penjagaan yang baik dari kita. Benda tu dia tak boleh nak buat sendiri. So kalau orang yang jaga dia tu tak provide apa yang budak tu perlukan, itu dikira neglect violence. Dia nampak macam tak violence tapi sebenarnya dia adalah types of violence. Because this neglect can lead to many long-term side effects such as physical injuries, low self-esteem, attention disorders, violent behavior, physical and psychological illness, and can even result in death. So banyak sebenarnya efek yang boleh terjadi akibat violence ni. Tak kisahlah physical or sexual, psychological or neglect. Every one of the violence have their own effect, and usually effect dia tu lebih kurang sama je. Macam tu. Okay, so kita nak discuss sekarang ni, violence dengan crime tu, is it the same thing? Okay, actually not every case of violence is a crime, and not every crime is violence. Faham tak? Tak semestinya semua violent tu crime, and tak semestinya semua crime tu violent. Crime is jenayah. Sebab kat setengah negara dia punya law kan lain. So contoh dekat sini benda tu dikira sebagai jenayah, tapi dekat sana benda tu tak dikira sebagai jenayah pun. Contoh macam benda-benda yang attack psychological tu kan, diorang tak anggap benda tu jenayah pun, sebab benda tu selalunya orang pandang rendah psychological violence tu. Okay, as for the moral judgment of this violence, in my opinion, since violence ni kan act yang boleh memberi harm kepada orang kan, so I think it is very immoral if the person committed violence. Tak kisahlah siapa pun, tak kisahlah daripada umur tua ke, muda ke, lelaki atau perempuan, siapa yang buat violence ni, dia tetap salah. Contoh kan, kita tengok sekarang ni kes yang Amber Heard dengan Johnny Depp. Amber Heard perempuan, dia violence terhadap Johnny Depp, tapi some people ada nak backup Amber Heard saying that she's woman. I mean, woman or not, she's still violence toward people. Benda tu tak, violence ni dia tak kira gender. Lelaki atau perempuan still can do violence, and dua-dua salah. Dua-dua immoral for me, because dia kalau benda violence tu tak effect orang lain, or tak ada negative consequences kat orang lain or dia sendiri, itu tak apa tau. Tapi violence ni dia ada negative consequences towards others and people who buat violence tu sendiri. So I think it is very immoral lah kalau person tu buat violence ni. So let us not do violence, okay? Okay, that's for me. Thank you.
So my name is Erin Natasha and I will explain on terrorism. The definition of terrorism is the unlawful use or threat of violence, especially against the state or the public, as a political motivated means of attack or coercion. Terrorists are not people who advertise their intention to commit acts or terror. So there are 5 types of terrorism. First, state-sponsored terrorism. This terrorism consists of terrorist acts on a state or government by a state or government. Maksudnya terrorism ni berlaku antara kerajaan atas dasar nak protect kerajaan masing-masing. Mungkin disebabkan akibat salah faham dan sebagainya. Second, dissent terrorism, which are terrorist groups which have rebel against their government. Contohnya, rakyat buat perhimpunan atau rusuhan untuk menunjukkan ketidakpuasan hati mereka terhadap kerajaan. Third, terrorists and the left and right, which are groups rooted in political ideology. This one pula based on politics and lead to terrorism. Next, religious terrorism, which are terrorist group which are extremely religiously motivated, di mana mereka ni membuat keganasan kerana nak menegakkan keadilan dalam agama masing-masing. The last one is criminal terrorism, which are terrorist acts used to aid in crime and criminal profit. Based on faith, those who have been quick to link Islam to terrorism should make an effort to understand Islam and Muslims. Islam is a religion of peace, tolerant religion with faith. Next, I will discuss on moral judgment, which is for me, terrorism is immoral because terrorism in all types and forms is always wrong because it can lead to harmful. A lot of people will be killed because of involving in terrorism, and for me it is unethical action since Islam asks us to do good with each other, right? It should not be too aggressive when it comes to attack another group. Based on utilitarianism, right or wrong is determined by the overall goodness of the consequences of action. So terrorism is obviously give a bad impact to the group and others because it can cause harm and it also can bring up to another war. For me, basically terrorism is unethical because most of them are selfish. They don't think about the consequences and the effects that other people need to face it. They only think about themselves. Otherwise, the victim will suffer injustice, just like we are punishing the person that are innocent. For example, Islam may punish in another way, but even though the person that commit to agama saya sendiri, but for me, if we hate our religion, as long as they do not hurt us in physical way, kita tak perlu pun bom or pancung diorang. Same goes with them. They should not do because it is unethical. So we need to respect each other to make sure that there is no war and we can avoid this terrorism. Then I will pass the another part of terrorism to Amira Hasha.
I'm Amira Hasha, so I'm gonna continue what Erin has presented just now. Okay, so for the first example, I will give the terror attack, which is a mass shooting at the Christchurch Mosque at New Zealand. Okay, so this is this caused 50 Muslims died during that time, and they were performing Jummah prayer. And then the second one is during the Ariana Grande concert, which held at London. So that one causes death of 22 people that died. So what is the correlation between two of those examples? Okay, first I would like to say that orang selalu kaitkan terrorism dengan Islam, because we can see that yang first tu mesti dia buat dekat tengoklah dia macam dia buat dekat masa orang Muslim orang Islam tengah solat. And then second one, I think Salman Abedi nama dia, which people said that he is a Muslim. So orang selalu macam kaitkan dengan macam Islam ni mengajar untuk kita menjadi ganas. But it is actually, we can see that yang first tu dia macam macam mana dia benci, dia ada sentimental benci dalam diri dia. Contohnya kita tengok yang masa dia buat masa shooting tu pun dia buat live kan. Okay, so kita boleh nampak lah macam tu. Sebabkan benda tu lah, sebabkan terrorism ni lah yang wujudnya Islamophobia, which orang Western people dia macam memandang serong terhadap Muslim ni, sebab dia rasa macam okay, Islam ni mengajar keganasan. So sebab itulah ada wujudnya Islamophobia tu. Even dekat yang the new one, which is at France, yang Arab people tu dia macam menentang cikgu dia sebab cikgu dia ajar pasal prophet kita. So dia macam sebab itulah dia macam ada sentimental benda-benda macam menganggap yang Islam ni dia membawa ancaman.
Hello everyone, my name is Nur Anisha Balkis binti Zainuddin, and I will be explaining to you guys about war. As you guys know, wars have become a part of human history for thousands of years and has become increasingly destructive as technology and industrialization have advanced nowadays. But have you guys ever thought, what is war actually? So according to Oxford English University, war is a situation in which two or more countries or a number of group of people fights against each other over a period of time. Meanwhile, according to Karl von Clausewitz, he defined war as an act of force to compel our enemy to do our will. Okay, so I mentioned one name just now, which is Karl von Clausewitz, and I bet you guys might be wondering like, who is this guy? So Karl von Clausewitz was a Prussian general and a military theorist that stressed on the moral and political aspects of war. Okay, so Clausewitz is a military theorist that stresses over moral and political aspects of war. And in what Clausewitz refers to the theoretical aspects of war, he outlines 3 objectives of success in war. Okay, so the first one is the armed force of the opponent must be destroyed, which means that you have to kill everyone that is a part of the war. The second one is the country must be occupied, which means that you yourself must be in the kawasan yang you nak jajah. Like you have to be there according to Clausewitz. If not, then you won't win. Okay, so the last one is the will of the enemy must be broken. Now let's move on to the main causes or types of war, and I have listed 8 main causes of war. Okay, so the first one is economic, territorial, religion, nationalism, revenge, civil war, revolutionary war, and also defensive war. For the first reason or the causes of war is economic. Okay, as we all know, like wars always happen when another country wanna take over another country as well. Like it always happened like that. Wars always started like that actually nowadays. For the second one is religion. I guess it's quite clear already that when you have different kind of belief, different kind of religion, like one religion will always try to empower another religion, so that's why it will contribute to wars. So for the third causes of war is nationalism. Nationalism in this context essentially means attempting to prove that your country is superior to another by violent action. This often takes the form of an invasion. Related to nationalism is imperialism, which is built on the idea that conquering other countries is glorious and bring honors and esteem to the conqueror. Racism can also be linked to nationalism. Okay, so one day Adolf Hitler starts a war with Russia, partly because of the Russians and Eastern Europeans in general were seen as Slavs, or a group of people who the Nazis believed to be an inferior race. So I guess you might be wondering, what is inferior race? Inferior race is anyone of the humankind or human races that has contributed next to nothing at all to human civilization or culture, which means that Adolf Hitler starts a war with the Russians because he believes that this group of people doesn't contribute anything to humankind. Macam tak berguna lah kumpulan ni. That's why Adolf Hitler want to conquer this country, wanna like kill or make sure that this group of people vanish. Okay, for example, World War I from 1914 and 1918. That's one of the example for type of war that happens under nationalism. Okay, so moving on to the fourth causes of war, which is revenge. I can say that revenge is also related to nationalism actually. As the people of a country which has been wronged are motivated to fight back by pride and spirit. Unfortunately, this kind of feelings can lead to an endless chain of retaliatory wars being set in motion, which is very difficult to stop. Historically, revenge has been a factor in many European wars, as for example the World War II from 1939 to 1945. For civil war, these generally take place when there is sharp internal disagreement within a country, which means that it doesn't involve any other country, just one country. Okay, the disagreement can be about who rules the country, how the country should be run, or the people's right. These internal rifts often turn into breach that results in violent action or violent conflict between two or more opposing groups. Remember, not country, just in one country. Civil wars can also be sparked by separatist groups who want to form their own independent country. From what I understand, it's just like in Malaysia when there's a lot of parties that wanna run this country. So sebab banyak parti dalam Malaysia ni, of course there's gonna be a lot of misunderstanding from one country to from one party to another party. So that's when it will spark the feelings to start a war in one country. That's when civil war happens. Okay, revolutionary war can occur when a large section of the population of a country revolts against the individual or group that rules the country because they feel dissatisfied by the way of the person that lead the country. Revolutions can also begin because of a variety of reasons, including economic hardship faced by one of the particular groups in the country, or also the feelings of dissatisfied, as I mentioned before, dissatisfied or injustice that were caused by the leader to a group of people in the country. Other factors may contribute to, such as unpopular wars with other countries. Revolutionary war, somehow it started because of civil war. As I mentioned just now, civil war ni dia start bila mana antara parti dengan parti, macam orang besar dalam parti tu, tapi tak melibatkan rakyat lah maksudnya. But somehow revolutionary war ni, I guess it's because bila melibatkan ramai orang, bila melibatkan rakyat, macam satu kumpulan ni sokong satu parti ni, and then another kumpulan ni sokong parti yang lain. So that's when dia akan jadi war. And somehow Riot also is another term actually for war. Macam daripada rusuhan itulah akan menjadi peperangan dalam satu negara itu. Okay, now I want to talk about the difference of war in Islam and also war in general. Okay, basically war in Islam, there's a slightly difference in the factors or causes for the war. Okay, in Islam, when you start a war, it's basically just to protect our religion and also to spread our religion. Dalam Islam ni, peperangan hanyalah dimulakan untuk mempertahankan agama kita and also untuk menyebarkan agama kita. Like, it's not really about hurting others. Like, even if we win that war, we cannot simply just force everyone in that particular country or state to convert their religion to Islam. Like, it's really not about that actually. Referring to that, there is actually some guidelines or commands by our Prophet Muhammad SAW in wars according to Islam. Okay, so Prophet Muhammad SAW asked us that we cannot just simply kill a child, a sick person, a woman, old people. We cannot even kill a monk or priest. We don't have to cut a tree. We cannot destroy a temple or building. We cannot disfigure the dead. We cannot kill an animal except just to eat them. We cannot kill those who surrendered. We have to be good to the prisoners and feed them, not torture them even more. We cannot also kill those who run away from the wars. And the last one is we cannot enforce Islam to them. Even though they are from different religion and even though we already conquered that state or country, we cannot just simply ask them to leave their religion and force them to be with us in Islam. It doesn't work that way in our religion. In addition to that, there is also another evidence that shows that Islam doesn't really support wars, even though there has been many wars before this. There's 5 objectives under Maqasid Sharia, which are preservation of religion, preservation of life, preservation of wealth and properties, preservation of akal or mind, and last one is preservation of lineage. Okay, preservation of life here doesn't only refers to our own life, it also refers to other person's life. But somehow we can kill others, but only in some conditions, which means that we are protecting our life. Let's say in a condition where a person want to kill you, like a person want to stab you already. But at that time, I guess you can kill that person. But it doesn't mean that you can right away kill that person. Like, it's like a self-defense, because if you want to talk about killing, I bet it will be illegal as well in law terms nowadays, even though you are trying to protect yourself. I have talked about the difference of war in the context of Islam and also war in general, and I have also talked about the concepts of war in Islam as well, where we have restrictions and commands in Islam. But somehow, if you want to talk about the concepts of war in morality or humanity, there's 3 questions that I want you guys to brainstorm or think about it. The first question is war a good thing? The second question is, does violence solve all problems and conflicts? And the third one is the purpose of the wars are for peace? This is solely from my own opinion. Like, as we all know, wars can cause a lot of damage, can cause a lot of loss of life in many other ways, and many people also think that wars are ethically wrong. But somehow there's also people that say that wars are necessary to solve some conflicts or troubles. Wars have numerous reasons. Certain types of war, for example, a defensive war, might be fought with the desired outcome from being peaced. However, most wars are fought with the intention of beating the enemy and effectively imposing peace on the victor's terms. From this context, what I can give an example is we can see that what has been happening to the Muslims in Palestine and also to the Muslims in Uyghur camp that were locked down. I can say that in these particular cases, wars are needed for the sake of peace for the Muslims that have been in trouble in Palestine and also in the Uyghur camp.
As for the conclusion, we can see that violence is immoral because it can be anywhere, anytime. Like Farina has mentioned, yang benda tu kita tak tahu pun actually it is violence, tapi dia sebenarnya violence. Contohnya parents dia neglect, dia mengabaikan tanggungjawab dia as a parent kepada anak-anak dia, itu dikira sebagai violence juga. And then I give you another example, which is dekat workplace. Workplace tu boss dia tak menjaga kebajikan pekerja. Contohnya bila pekerja tu dia kerja overtime and then dia bagi kerja yang banyak, but still the gaji is still macam sikit. So sebab itulah macam neglect. Benda tu macam nampak tak violence, tapi sebenarnya dia neglect, dia categorize under neglect violence. Okay, the second one is terrorism. Like Erin has said, terrorism is immoral. I also agree with that because contoh terror attack tu kan, terror attack sebab bombing semua tu, mass shooting semua tu, it can cause effect of macam banyak kematian after that. Okay, we can see that ISIS tu dia macam satu organisation macam okay lah, dia macam okay untuk jihad, tapi there are certain parts in ISIS tu yang dia macam terlalu ekstremis, which macam adalah benda-benda dia yang mengakibatkan efek kepada orang pandai Islam ni. Last one is war. War ni dia depends on the situation and condition. Because in the history of Islam also has been mentioned yang masa zaman Nabi ada perang Uhud, perang Badar. Okay, tapi masa dalam tu diorang berjihad jalan Allah. Tapi ada surah Al-Baqarah which is 191, verse 191. Some people they just took it literal meaning, which hendaklah kamu macam membunuh orang bukan Islam, but they just took it literally. Tapi padahal the meaning of the ayat is macam kita kena bunuh orang tu, macam tu lah. Padahal Islam ni mengajar kita berdamai, kasih sayang semua tu. Itulah. So they just took it, they just took the verse macam literal je. That's all from us. Thank you for watching until the end of the video, and bye bye. Thank you.